Here now, Corey Lewandowski, former Trump campaign manager and chief strategist for America First Action. Corey, good to see you tonight. Does it feel different to you? You know, we've watched this happen so many times. There's something that feels very real and very intense about the debate that's going on right now.
Well, I think it absolutely does, and I think the American people are tired of individuals who shouldn't have access to guns getting access to those guns. And what the president has said is you have to look at the mental health of individuals. And in this particular case, we've seen an individual who had the police called to their home something like 38 or 39 times to deal with potential problems. And that person, for whatever reason, and I'm not blaming anybody other than the person who committed this heinous crime or is alleged to have, should never have been able to have access to a firearm of any nature. And we need to stop people who are unstable from having access to firearms.
Absolutely. You know, one of the solutions that the president proposed, he talked about something that doesn't get talked about a lot, and that is that mental institutions, facilities where people can be kept away from a community that they might harm, really closed down in large numbers over the last several decades. He talked about reopening them. How's he going to do that?
Well, I think, look, there has to be a concerted effort from Congress to understand that we have to be able to fund and identify individuals who have a mental disease, who are not only a harm to themselves, but are harm to the community. And we saw just recently another potential school shooter who said he was going to go and cause harm, and the police stepped in and stopped that from happening. We have to make sure people who have mental illnesses, have been diagnosed with mental illnesses, or could potentially have mental illnesses, first and foremost, get the treatment they need. And that means if more money from Congress has to go to that, then we have to make sure that happens, because we cannot put guns in the hands of individuals who don't have the mental capacity to handle them properly.
So the president has staked out some pretty difficult political territory here. He's going to try to keep the NRA happy while at the same time raising the age limit to 21, which they've already said they're not in favor of, and that would be for AR-15s. It's already at 21 for handguns. And he also has to keep people, you know, pleased, who believe that the last thing that should happen is that guns should end up in the hands of teachers. How's he going to do that?
Well, I think if you look at, what the NRA talks about a lot is training people, making sure that they're certified, making sure that they have a background before they're allowed to get their licenses. In many states, those are the requirements. And in most of the times, the NRA provides training for those individuals to show them how to handle a weapon properly. But where the NRA and the president fundamentally agree is this notion of bump stocks, which I'd never heard of before the rampage in Las Vegas. And I think everybody agrees that that's something that we can get rid of, because there is no real reason to have this bump stock issue. So there is synergy between the president and the NRA when it comes to unreasonable gun registration, unreasonable gun rules. The NRA and the president agree that this notion of a bump stock should never have taken place, and Congress needs to change that immediately.
That seems like low-hanging fruit at this point that should be taken care of. And the NRA is also in favor of not allowing people who have proven to be potentially violent and on medication and in a condition that does not allow them to have a gun. They don't think those people should have guns either. But a lot of people who voted for this president are very passionate defenders of the Second Amendment, and they feel that any sort of impinging on the rights of gun owners or any hemming in the restrictions around them is sort of one step along the road to taking away their rights to own a gun.
Well, let me say, I've been a strong supporter of the Second Amendment. As you may know, I served as a police officer in the state of New Hampshire. So, look, I think every lawful gun owner wants to make sure that the rules for obtaining those guns is followed, because it's the criminals who don't follow the rules who get the guns. When you look at Chicago, I think we've got last year, 605 murders or so. I think this year we're at, 30 or 40 or 50 in Baltimore alone. Just in Baltimore, the criminals don't follow the rules. So when it relates to individuals who support the Second Amendment, they want to make sure that the rules are in place so that law-abiding citizens follow them first and foremost. But you cannot have handicapped individuals, mentally handicapped individuals, mentally incapacitated individuals with access to weapons and firearms. There is no place for it.
I got to ask you one question, because the news that broke tonight is that the armed guard who was on this campus in Parkland didn't act. He stood outside the building. He was suspended, and now he has resigned. I mean, that's going to make it pretty tough to argue. That's going to make it pretty tough to argue that that arming somebody on campus would have saved these children. Let's listen to the sheriff, and then we'll get your thoughts, Corey.
After seeing video witness statements and Scott Peterson's very own statement, I decided this morning to suspend Scott Peterson without pay pending an internal investigation. As is his right, Scott Peterson chose to resign.
He stood by, Corey, and he had a gun.
You know, it's a shame, but you have to look at what our school processes are now, because we have to protect our students. If that means we've got doors that lock in classrooms like they do on the cockpits of airplanes, if that means we don't just necessarily shutter in place, which is what the schools have traditionally done, we have to look at the totality of how we're protecting our children. And if one individual is what we think our protection is, who is going to not act in a time of crisis, then we need to have a better understanding of how we protect our kids who go to school every single day and deserve safety in the classrooms.
Corey Lewandowski, formerly of the Trump campaign and a police officer in New Hampshire, as you reminded us tonight. Corey, good to see you. Thank you.
Thank you.